Hey friends, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Keisha and today I'm going to be talking about some of my bookish buzzwords. So I actually saw Amanda from the Curly Reader do this video and I thought it was very clever, and I ended up looking it up and I noticed that a few other people have done this video as well. I'm not sure who originally created it, but I will go ahead and leave Amanda's video linked down below. I thought it was such an interesting concept to kind of get to know somebody's book taste and get to know what someone enjoys in a book and what kind of draws them to pick one up. So basically, bookish buzzwords are just words or phrases that kind of make you gravitate towards a certain book if you hear somebody talking about this book or if you see it in the synopsis. So I do have 10 here today. I think that I probably have more than 10, but we're just gonna stick with these today because I feel like these are the ones that typically trigger me to pick up a book the most. So my first bookish buzzwords are going to be psychological and therapy or therapist. So I really like psychological horror and psychological thrillers, but I wouldn't say I like all of them. I do gravitate towards those because I've found that I really like things that kind of mess with my mind or play with my mind or make me think what is going on here. But I also like books that deal with mental health issues and different things like that. So maybe a character who is going through some mental health issues and I like to kind of see how that affects their life, how that plays out. I find it very fascinating. I actually can't watch movies that deal with this. So if it's a psychological movie, I typically can't watch things like that. For example, Split or Shutter Island. I actually have a bad experience with Shutter Island. We're not going to talk about that today. But yeah, I can't watch things like that. But I absolutely love reading books that deal with the psyche, and like I said, whether that is somebody in the book that is kind of going through some stuff or whether it makes me feel kind of trippy. I love mind games and mind things and just kind of learning more about what makes people tick and what triggers certain things, what causes certain things. I just think it's very fascinating. And I also like to read books about therapists. So for example, The Silent Patient is kind of what geared me towards the therapist kind of vibe, because I thought it was very interesting to see Theo as a psychotherapist and how he examines the silent patient and determines different things. So I think it's very interesting when a book deals with psychological aspects like that, at least for me. So that is definitely something that makes me gravitate towards those books a little bit more. My next buzzword is going to be Jennifer McMahon. Now, is this a buzzword or phrase? Not really. It's an author's name. But if a book says that this is for fans of Jennifer McMahon, if you like Jennifer McMahon, you'll probably like this book. This is in the same vein of her stories, then I'm probably going to be more likely to pick that book up because Jennifer McMahon is one of my favorite authors. I love so many of her books and I love what she does with the dual timelines and with the spooky vibes and her atmosphere and just all kinds of different things I absolutely love about her books. So if you're telling me that another author is doing something similar to her, I'm much more likely to pick it up. But on the same vein, I'm also much more likely to critique that book a little bit more because you're holding it to such a high standard. My third bookish buzzword is going to be written in letters. So this actually started with the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Schaefer and Annie Barrows. That book is entirely written in letters. It was one of the first historical fiction books I ever read as an adult, like getting back into historical fiction, and it's very different to read a book written in letters. It's not quite the same as reading a book that has like showing you things in between. It's entirely in letters. Like there's nothing in between telling you what's going on between the letters or anything else. And as weird as it is, it was so good. And I've actually read Until Tomorrow, Mr. Marsworth, which is also entirely written in letters, and I loved that. And there's just something about a book that is written that way that allows me to connect with the characters a little bit more, to kind of feel like I'm there. It makes it feel more real to me. So I don't really know how to describe it. Unless you're someone who has read books that are written in letters, then I think you can know where I'm coming from. But I don't know, it just takes you a little bit deeper into the story, and I absolutely love those. Number 4 is going to be spooky middle grade. This should come as no surprise to anybody because I love spooky middle grade books. So if you give me a book title and say, hey, this is spooky middle grade, it's automatically going to pique my interest. Are they all going to go on my list? No, because I do have little niches within spooky middle grade that I like, but automatically if I hear spooky middle grade, that's definitely something that is going to catch my eye and something I want to look into. I find spooky middle grade books really interesting because I think a lot of times we don't realize why we're trying to scare kids, but it's really not about that. It's about kids learning to be brave and be wise and just kind of conquer their fears head on and showing them that there are things in the world that are kind of scary, but you can get through this. And just because you're scared doesn't mean you can't do hard things. So I love those messages that spooky middle grade books kind of present, and I think that's really what draws me to them. Number 5 is going to be dual timelines or multiple points of view. I love books that do this because, one, I feel like they are a little bit quicker for me to read, and I like to get through my books quick because I like to read a lot of books. But I love the dual timelines where you have maybe a present day timeline and then a timeline in history, and it takes both of those to kind of see what's going on in the story, or where you're getting maybe one place in the timeline is you don't really know what's going on and the past helps you figure that out. I just love things like that. And I also love multiple points of view, which I feel like this could be a separate buzzword, but I'm putting them together because they're both like multiple things, like dual timelines or multiple POV. And I love multiple perspectives because it allows me to kind of see into each character's head a little bit better versus just having one narrator through the entire story. So I definitely think that piques my interest and draws me into a story more as well. My 6th bookish buzzword is going to be unreliable narrator. If you tell me that this book is going to have an unreliable narrator, I'm there, because I love trying to figure out if somebody's telling the truth or not. I love trying to figure out if this person can be trusted and what's going through their head. And I don't know, there's just something about that. Every book that I've read with an unreliable narrator has been so fascinating to me, but I think it's hard too at times to determine whether a narrator is gonna be unreliable. So you can't really always recommend books for that. If I hear it from somewhere, I'm like, oh, okay, let me read this. But then sometimes that can be a spoiler too. So it kind of depends, but I love unreliable narrators. The next buzzword that I like is lie or liar, which just comes to, it just makes a story so much more enticing to know that somebody's lying about something, that you can't trust people, and you're trying to like piece together this mystery and figure out what's going on. The Last Time I Lied is one of my favorite books. Sometimes I Lie is one of my favorite books, and those have to do with lies, and those have to do with trying to figure a person out and figuring out who's telling the truth and who's not, and what really happened in these situations. And I think that is so interesting. And I don't know, it's kind of like a bad thing. You think, oh, you like to read about lies? Like, what kind of person are you? But y'all, I read some pretty messed up books. I think all of us, or maybe not all of us, but at least a few of my friends out there read some pretty twisted books, but they're just so interesting. I can't pass them up. Number 8 is going to be anything to do with memory, whether that's gaps in your memory, memory loss, maybe something that was remembered incorrectly. I love things like that. I'm actually reading a book right now that involves this woman who can't remember the past 2 days of her life, why she experienced a dissociative state, and why she can't remember these 2 days and what happened to her for those 2 days. I love things like that. It just is so interesting to me to try to figure out what triggers people. Again, I feel like all this kind of weaves together into what I like in a book, but just trying to figure out what makes people tick, and also what happens to people that causes memory loss and why people can't remember things, and trying to piece together what might have happened with the character. I think that's so interesting. I love things with memory. It just, I don't know what it is. And I love memories myself, so maybe it's just something with, I love remembering, I love sentimental stuff. This could honestly go into another like bookish buzzword type thing, but I love the concept of memories and how important memories are, whether that's short-term memory, long-term memory, and just how they play into your life, whether or not you remember things. I think it's really cool. So I love books with memory. Number 9 is going to be books with libraries or bookstores or librarians or books or anything of that sort. So I will say that this does not speak to all books, because there are certain books that I've read that focus just on like a little bookshop or something, and I'm not super into like the coziness of like the cozy books about bookshops thing yet. I have tried a book by Jenny Colgan that was in that vein, and I didn't really like it, but then again I read The Good Sister and the main character was a librarian, and I loved that aspect and seeing her as a librarian. So it just kind of depends on the book and how it's written and what it's about. So I do like some books that involve libraries and books and things of that sort, but I don't always. It just depends. Like I said, I liked A Place to Hang the Moon that had a librarian. The Good Sister had a librarian. But when I read, I think it was The Little Bookshop on the Corner or something like that, that one was just not the type of book that I typically like to read. So I won't say that this buzzword fits for all, but my interest would be piqued to look at a book if this buzzword were included. And the last one, number 10, this is kind of a long one, but I don't read a lot of romance, but when I do, I typically like friends to lovers or second chance romance. I don't know what it is about that, but there's just something that warms my heart about somebody who has just been in your life for so long and you've kind of friend zoned them, but there's somebody who's always been there, somebody that takes care of you, that loves you, that's always there when you need them, and that person kind of becoming your lover, the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, because why not? They've been such a great friend. And I also recognize that that can be scary when you turn your best friend into your boyfriend, or best friend into your girlfriend, or vice versa. It can be very scary. And I love just kind of seeing how that progresses in books. And I love the second chance romance too. Like maybe you were, together in high school, and then life came at you. You went your separate ways, and then a few years, or like 10 years later, you reconnect and sparks fly, and you realize, wow, I was really stupid. I love this person. Like, this is who I'm meant to be with. I love things like that. So any book that has second chance romance or friends to lovers, I love it so much, especially like childhood friends to lovers, childhood friend, going about your life, and then you end up getting with them. I love that. Don't read a lot of romances, but the ones that I do enjoy reading are typically ones that are with those tropes. Okay guys, that is going to be all of the bookish buzzwords that I discussed today. Like I mentioned before, there are a ton more that I could probably think of if I really put my mind to it, but I think these are the ones that I typically gravitate towards the most. I would love to know what some of your bookish buzzwords are, so whether you want to do this video yourself or leave some of your bookish buzzwords down in the comments, please do, because I think it's so interesting to figure out what different people enjoy reading and what different people gravitate towards in books. So definitely let me know. And as always, I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, friends.